Hello. Thank you so much for joining me today. How you doing? This video popped up on my homepage today. And this is kind of embarrassing, but it made me realize I have no idea how this works. How do European elections work? This is cringy to say, but I didn't even realize that the EU had its own elections. I had no idea how that works. I still don't. Which is pretty embarrassing. I feel like I should know how that works. The EU is a pretty big deal. How are they elected? The EU is a huge place comprised of many countries. It sounds like a total nightmare to elect a parliament to the EU. A logistical nightmare, I mean. Yeah, I had never thought about that. To be honest, I kind of thought each individual country elected like a parliament member or something. I didn't realize there was an entire election across Europe. And I still don't know. I don't even know what I'm talking about. I need to watch this video by CNBC International. Check them out. Small and up and coming YouTube channel. Check them out, link down below. Let's see if this can clear some things up. I think I'm going to have to look even deeper into this than just this video, but let's start out with this.
It is one of the biggest democratic exercises in the world. More than 350 million people across 28 European countries are eligible to vote and to choose their next representatives that will sit here in the European Parliament. But with 28 countries voting on different days, each with its own electoral laws and procedures, it's bound to get complicated.
Whoa. Okay. 350, that just happens to be about the size of the American population. So that's kind of interesting. But so maybe they do elect a representative from their country.
The first European parliamentary elections took place back in 1979, when only 9 countries were members of what was then called the European Economic Community. Since then, that community has expanded into what's now known as the European Union, and voters head to the polls every 5 years to elect.
Oh, wow. And this was 5 years ago. When's the next election? It must be coming up.
The 751 members of the European Parliament, or MEPs. The number of MEPs assigned to each country varies and corresponds to the country's population. For example, the EU's most populous country, Germany, elects 96 lawmakers, while Luxembourg only gets 6 seats. In some countries, like Italy, MEPs represent a specific region. In others, like France, they represent the entire country. So now let's get into how all of these MEPs are actually elected.
That's actually similar to like the Electoral College over here in America. Certain states do it differently than others, you know. Yeah, some are divided up, like their electorates are divided up based on the proportion of the votes for each party they get. Most are just, you know, whoever wins the election, the majority vote in that state gets all the electorates.
Voting is open to all EU citizens, and in Belgium, Bulgaria, Cyprus, Greece, and Luxembourg, it's actually compulsory. This time around, the elections are spread over 4 voting days between May 23rd and 26th. Here in Belgium, citizens cast their vote.
So this already happened this year.
Vote on Sunday. Whereas the British and the Dutch have their say on the previous Thursday. The results, however, are kept secret until every country has voted. Next, let's talk about the method, or should I say methods, that the EU uses to elect its representatives. Stay with me. This is where it gets a little bit tricky. Depending on where a voter is based, they could be using one of 3 systems: the closed list, open list, or single transferable vote system. What they all have in common is that they aim to achieve proportional representation. That means the number of votes a party gets will directly correspond to the number of seats they receive in the European Parliament. In the
Makes
closed
sense.
list system, citizens vote for parties. Those parties have already selected a fixed list of candidates. So if a party gets 20% of votes in a country allocated 10 MEPs, the two top people on the party's list will become members of the European Parliament. In the open list system, Europeans vote for a party, but can also indicate their favorite candidate. This means voters can actually change the order of the party's list, therefore influencing which of the party's candidates become.
I like that. That's kind of like a best of both worlds. Kind of feels that way, at least. Over here in America, voting for a party is quite a foreign concept. I mean, you can, for instance, in the federal election, you know, because it's more than just the president up for election. You can just say, vote all Republican. But most people don't do that, I don't think.
MEPs. In the single transferable vote system, voters can choose as many candidates as they like and then number them by preference.
Cool.
These votes are counted in phases. First, people's number one preferences are counted. Any candidate who passes a certain quota of votes is elected. Any votes exceeding that quota are then changed into the ballot's second preference and transferred to the other candidates. If there still aren't enough votes to reach the quota, the candidate with the lowest amount of votes is eliminated, and those votes are transferred to the second preference too. This process is repeated until all
It's kind of brilliant.
seats up for election are filled. One more thing, some countries have what's called an electoral threshold, which means that a party or a candidate needs to get a certain percentage of the national vote in order to get a seat here in Brussels. This, in theory, keeps fringe or extremist parties from winning seats without meeting a minimum level of widespread support. So citizens select their parties and candidates at a national level. They then align themselves with other EU politicians with similar views and form one big pan-EU group at the European Parliament. These alliances help standalone parties and independent politicians gain more influence.
Gotcha.
The big elephant in the room is, of course, Brexit. The European Parliament's 751 seats will shrink down to 705 once the UK leaves the European Union. The plan is to reallocate some of those seats to underrepresented countries like France, Spain, Italy, and the Netherlands. There was another proposal on the table too: transnational lists. It would have transformed UK seats into seats for a pan-European constituency. Its advocates, who include the likes of French President Emmanuel Macron, say it would strengthen European democracy by forcing parties to discuss European, not just national issues. EU lawmakers have rejected this idea, but it does bring us back to why this year's European elections are seen as so important.
I feel quite stupid because I didn't realize that the MEP, you know, I've reacted to MEPs, you know, in parliament, you know, elections and stuff. I've read it in news reports and stuff, but I didn't realize that those are specifically members of parliament in the European Union. I thought they were just members of the parliament in their respective countries.
Why this year's European elections are seen as so important. Pro-Europe parties have dominated.
And I can see now that the European Parliament elections did indeed already happen. They ended in June, which I guess coincided with, like, obviously there were big French elections, big German elections. So it is a little bit hard to follow it all, to be honest, over here in America, especially when you don't understand how the whole system works.
European elections are seen as so important.
But I'm learning, slowly.
Parties have dominated the parliament, but nationalists and Eurosceptics are gaining traction. Whoever sits in the European Parliament will help determine what happens next in this economic and political union. Hi guys, it's
Okay, Well, what did I learn there? I learned that I think I need to go back to basics. Right here. How does the EU work? Because I never honestly really thought about how the whole protocol itself works as far as elections and representatives themselves. Obviously, I understand the purpose of the EU to create, common laws, common regulations to help collaboration across Europe, all these types of things. But the details of how it all actually works, I do not know. So I'm going to have to learn some more. Thank you for watching, even if that was a little bit painful. It was a little bit painful for me. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Goodbye.